Hello everybody, welcome to another edition of Tech Support with Tony. I'm Tony. Alright guys, we're going to talk about model 4235 today. I'm going to go over the installer and user menus. This is something that we need to discuss, give you some information about how to properly configure your thermostat for various system types or different options, different features that the thermostat offers. So, like I said, model 4235. We're going to get it right here from the library of Braeburn, right here. This is where we got all the thermostats. Model 4235 has humidity control. It's good for up to 2 heat, 2 cool conventional systems, 3 heat, 2 cool heat pump systems. 7-day, 5.2 or no programming options. A lot of different features in here. But a big question I get is, can you help me set it up? I need to hook up a heat pump system and I don't know what I'm doing. Well, I'm going to talk you through it. So, here's what it looks like on the face. We got up and down arrow key. There's a menu key right there in between. Below we've got buttons labeled system, program, hold, and fan. I'm going to take you through the installer menu. This thermostat has 2 menus, a installer level menu and a user options menu. The installer menu will have items in it that are related typically to the initial installation for system type, conventional gas furnace, heat pump, single stage, multi-stage. The user menu has items in it that are typically more related to things that the end user, the homeowner, might want to address or set up for themselves. To access these menus, either installer or user menu, we're going to press the menu button, but we do it one of 2 different ways. If you just press the menu button and release, you'll get the user menu. If you press and hold it for more than 5 seconds, you'll get the installer menu. So we're going to start going through the installer menu first. We're going to look at all the different options. I'll explain what each one does, and then we'll kind of take a look at the user menu. Capiche? All right. So I know sometimes we get some glare on the screen. I'm hoping this will help. Pressing the menu button and holding it down will get us into the installer menu. The first item we see says mode RES. That stands for residential. This would be a residential profile that will give us certain options, particularly with the program schedule. It will give you a 4-event daily program schedule with the options of morning, day, evening, and night. You can toggle to a commercial mode. The up and down arrow key will change your option on any given menu item. So we're going to stick with the residential mode for this thermostat. Back, next, and return. These 3 buttons are going to serve those purposes. We press next, takes us to the next item in the menu, which is actually our programming level. You can set this up for 7-day program schedule, no programming, or 5.2. That's a weekday weekend mode. In the 7-day format, you'll have the option of doing 7 individual days or the week as a whole, a speed set, all 7 days the same. In the 5.2 mode, that gives you weekdays and weekends, a fixed format. And then, of course, program no turns the programming functionality off completely. Press next. Clock format, 12-hour clock. The other option is a 24-hour clock, military time. We're going to leave that on 12-hour. Next again, display scale, Fahrenheit degrees or Celsius degrees. So choose which one. Fahrenheit is the default. Next again, this is our system type. It's going to say system. This is HD1. That's a hydronic, one heat hydronic system. When you cycle it through, hydronic, one heat with one cool, that would be a hydronic system that also has cooling. CONV, conventional gas heat furnace with straight cool. One stage of heat, one stage of cool. Conventional 2-2. This is good for two-stage furnaces and up to two-stage cooling systems. If you have a two-stage furnace and a one-stage cooling, this is still your setting. This covers what you need. HP11, this is a heat pump. One stage heat, one stage cool for your heat pump system. HP21, two heat, one cool. This would be a heat pump that has an auxiliary heating source, whether it's heat strips or a gas furnace secondary, and then only one stage of cooling. HP32 gives you 3 stages of heat and up to 2 stages of cooling. This would be 2 compressor stages of heat and a final third stage of either electric strip heat or a gas furnace. Pressing next will take us to the next option, which is our differential. Differential is important. This is the temperature change needed to trigger your call. So what I mean by that is if you have it in the heat mode and you have set your desired set point for 70 degrees, this differential is set for 0.5, a half. So as the room temperature would drop a half a degree, that will trigger your call for heat. Once the call is triggered, the room warms up. When it gets back to set point, which is 70, then it shuts off. You have an option here to change that. You can go to 1 degree or 2 degrees. So if you set your first stage differential at 2 degrees, going back to our example, 70 degrees set point, we now need a 2 degree temperature drop before our call for heat engages. So that means the room would have to cool to 68 before our call for heat is triggered. Once it's triggered, then it will warm back up to 70 degrees and shut off. 70 is our set point. So it turns on at differential, off at set point. Let's set that back to 0.5. Next, diff 2. So when you have a multi-stage system, you're going to have a second stage differential. That's going to be how much room temperature is needed to trigger your second stage. This is added to the first stage. So if your first stage differential is also set to 2, and your second stage differential is set to 2, that means you're going to need 4 degree temperature drop before that second stage kicks in. Pressing next will give us, in this case, third stage differential, and this is because we had chosen 32 HP as our system type previously. So depending on your system type will give you your different differential options. Same concepts apply. This is added to the first 2 differentials. So if diff 3 is 2 degrees, diff 2 is 2 degrees, and diff 1 is 2 degrees, that's 6 degree total before your final third stage would kick in. Pressing next takes us to the next option. This is our fan control for emergency mode. When you have a heat pump set up, you're going to have an emergency mode option when you choose a multi-stage heat pump setting. Emergency fan, the default is electric, meaning that the thermostat is going to send a G signal when it's calling for the electric heat in emergency mode. But if you have a gas furnace as your auxiliary heat, then we want to change that to gas. This would be in like a dual fuel setup where you have a heat pump and also a secondary gas furnace. So we want to change this to gas for those types of setups. Electric if you have electric heat strips, gas if you have a gas furnace. This applies to your emergency mode. Next, auxiliary finish. Yes or no are the two options. This means that once the thermostat stages up to an auxiliary stage, it will remain on the auxiliary stage until the call is finished, all the way back to your set point. If you set this to no, when the thermostat stages up to an auxiliary stage, it'll run the auxiliary, but as the room warms up, the auxiliary will be turned off and it will revert or stage down to your initial first stage to finish the call. Sometimes that maybe is not desirable and you want to remain in high stage until you satisfy. So this setting allows you to control that. Auxiliary finish, yes or no. Next item is R valve. This is your reversing valve, sometimes called a changeover valve. For heat pump systems, when you select a heat pump system, you'll get this option. You can see the default value is O. O-type valves are active in the cooling mode. Some brands use a heat-active valve. Brands like Ruud, Rheem, sometimes Bosch systems will use a B-type valve. So we need to set this here either for O or B to match your system. Auxiliary heat. The default is setting for electric. So when we stage up to that auxiliary stage, if you have electric heat strips, you're going to set this to electric. But if you have a gas furnace, you want to set that to gas. This is important in a dual fuel system. This is what is going to turn off the compressor once you hit that auxiliary stage. You do not want to be running the gas furnace on top of the heat pump running. That will overheat your coil. When you enable this as gas, when the gas furnace stage starts, it will allow the gas furnace start up, and 60 seconds later, your compressor will be shut off. Important setting for dual fuel systems. Next option is CSCP. That's compressor short cycle protection. This will prevent the thermostat from initiating a compressor call for a minimum of 5 minutes from the previous call. So a call gets satisfied. If you have it set for 5, that's going to be a 5-minute short cycle delay. You can choose 4, 3, 2, 1, or 0. That'll turn that feature off. Compressor short cycle protection. Next item is residual cool fan. This keeps your blower fan running for a period of time after the cooling cycle has shut off. This purges your ductwork of any cool air that's in there. So your call becomes satisfied, the compressor shuts off, you can keep your fan running for 30 seconds, 60 seconds, or 90 seconds. Or of course you can turn that feature off. So this applies to keeping the blower fan and the air handler running for a period of time after a cooling call has been satisfied. The next option is circ lock. By default, that's set to off. This has to do with the fan mode. Typically, when you choose your fan mode, you're going to have two options mainly: auto and on. Auto runs the blower fan anytime there's a call for heat or cool, and then it shuts off. In the on mode, the blower fan runs constantly. But there's also a third mode that's called circulate. And when you choose circulate, that will run the fan a minimum of 35% runtime, which is about 22 minutes per hour. So the thermostat will periodically cycle the fan to keep the air moving when you're in circulate mode. If you set this to circ lock on, then your fan will only give you two options, on and circ. You'll lose the auto feature. Circ lock on means no auto feature. Circ lock off, you'll have the auto fan option. Next option is recovery. This has to do with your program schedule. Advanced recovery mode. This will allow the thermostat to work in advance of your program schedule to bring your room up or down to the desired temperature of the next program interval. So if you had your program set for 4 p.m. to change to another temperature, and at 3:45 it might start heating or cooling in advance to recover the temperature so that at 4 o'clock you are already at your temperature. And that's going to be a variable algorithm that's going to look at how far away you are from your target set point and bring that system on in advance before your next program interval. If you turn that feature off, then the program runs exactly at the times that it's dictated in the program schedule. Next, user lock level. This is a function that when the thermostat is locked, you can determine exactly what gets locked. There's three options here: 1, 2, and 3. The 3 lock is a complete lockout. When you lock the thermostat, all buttons will be locked. Lock 2 locks out buttons down here, but allows the up and down arrow key usage. And then lock 1 restricts access to the menu button. User lock is something that also has to be addressed in the user menu to set up a locking code. Just choosing this option here does not actually lock the thermostat. It merely dictates what will be locked when the thermostat is locked. Next item is humidity control. The default is off, but you can cycle independent humidity, dependent humidity, or off. Independent humidity would be if you have a separate dedicated piece of humidity equipment that you want to control. It works independently of your air handler. It doesn't require a call for heat or anything like that. We can just run that humidifier based off of a humidity set point. In the dependent mode, we're going to depend on the air handler and a call for our humidity functions to work. This is for dehumidification functions. We can turn this off. Again, dependent, off. Dependent, we're depending on the air handler to run. It's going to require a call for cool. Overcool limit. So this works with our dehumidification. When we are dehumidifying, we're using the cooling equipment to make that dehumidification process happen. We're going to set a desired humidity set point and a temperature set point. As the room is cooling off, we are also dehumidifying at the same time. However, if we reach our temperature set point but have not reached our humidity set point, this will allow the system to overcool based on this degree setting, 3 degrees, 2 degrees, or 1 degree. It will overcool beyond your cooling set point in an attempt to reach a desired humidity set point. So your space will become overcooled based on your cooling set point up to a maximum of 3 degrees so that we can allow that dehumidification to keep happening in order to reach a target humidity setting. Overcooling feature. Contact. This is a function for a set of dry contacts that are on the back of the thermostat. These dry contacts can be used for a couple different purposes. The default is off. If we set this to COND, that's going to be an option for a condensate overflow switch that you can connect to the dry contacts. If you have a condensate pan situation in your air handler where water accumulates from the dehumidification process, if that condensate pan or reservoir is not properly draining and you have a properly installed float switch, it will monitor the level of that water, and if it gets too high, it can trigger an alert in the display screen that will alert the user that the condensate pan is full, and it will shut off the cooling system until that issue is remedied. Right now we only got that option for condensate. There's 2 other options, but that depends on setting the thermostat for a commercial mode. So that very first setting that we did with residential or commercial, we have to set it to commercial, and then we get 2 more options here in addition to the condensate. We would get another option is for a door switch that we can use to connect to perhaps a door or an overhead garage door. And what that would do is if that door is open, then we can tell the thermostat, don't run until that door is closed. That's what that dry contact would do for us. The other option is for an occupancy sensor. So if the thermostat is connected to an occupancy sensor and it detects that there's no occupancy in the room, it will automatically set it back to a predefined temperature. So that's a set of dry contacts that we can use. Now I lost my menu because I waited too long. We're going to go back into that. And actually I'm going to change that to commercial so we see that, and we're going to cycle forward a whole bunch to get back to that contacts. Dry contact off, occupancy sensor, door sensor, condensate switch. This is for your dry contacts. They're labeled dry 1 and dry 2 on the back of the thermostat. You can also determine whether that contact is normally open or normally closed. Next item in the menu is a limit. You can set adjustment range limits. This one has a heating limit set at 87. You can change this here. The highest would be 90, but we're going to lower this down to 80. This is your high heat. So this is a setting that you can set if you want to prevent the user from raising the heat temperature above that number. That would limit their adjustment range. Next is going to be the heating low limit. This would be as low as you can set. So maybe you have a sensitive application and you don't want the heat to ever get less than 65. This would prevent the user from cranking the temperature all the way down to 45 and potentially making the space too cold. It gives you a limit. It adjusts the limit range. So right now in heat, our adjustment range is from 65 to 80. We also have the same thing in the cool mode. Low limit, cool. Maybe you got an application in a hot weather environment and people like to crank the air conditioning way down. You can limit them to a certain number. Let's say they can't take the cooling any less than 68. You set that limit here, it would prevent them from turning the air conditioning down too low. And then a high limit for your cooling. This would be the highest they could go in the cooling mode. Next option is an installer lock. If you want to lock this menu to prevent people from getting into this menu, you can do so. You can turn the installer lock function on. The default is off. If you turn it on and we go to the next item in the menu, it's going to prompt you to create a 4-digit installer lock code. And you would just set this. We're going to do 1, then press next, 2, next, 3, next, 4, next. Now we have set an installer lock code at 1, 2, 3, 4. The last item in the menu is a clear function. This will allow you to clear all the settings in this menu back to their factory defaults if you set it to all. If you set it to none, it's not going to clear and we'll be done. Next takes us back out of the menu. Now, you can see we've got overflow flashing. It's because I left that setting for condensate turned on and my contacts are telling me that that switch is open and we have that situation. So you can see that that is showing up like that. If we try to go back into that installer menu, we're going to press and hold the menu button. It won't let me go into the menu until I put in that lock code. So this can be used to set temperature limits and then lock people out of there where they can't get in and change them. So I would have to put in my lock code to unlock it. After you put in the 4th digit, you press next, and now we're in the menu. First item, mode, commercial or residential. We can change that. We're going to change it back to residential. And then we're going to exit the menu by pressing the return button. Now you can see that that overflow message has disappeared because I took it off of commercial mode. So that's your installer menu on this thermostat. A lot of settings. All of these settings are in the installer manual that comes with the thermostat. There's a chart that lays them all out, shows you and tells you what each one does and your different options there. There's a second menu and a second manual, a user level menu, and this has different items in it. I'm going to take you through that real quick so that we can see what we have in store there. To access the user menu, we just simply press the menu button and let go. The first item we're going to see is actually to set the clock. You'll see that the hour character is blinking. You can change that, set it to whatever time is appropriate. Press next. The minutes will start blinking. Adjust your minutes to what you want. Press next. You can set the day of the week. Yay for Friday. We're going to go with Friday. Then when you press next, we get our humidity set point option. We had set this thermostat up for humidity, so we're going to be able to do that right here. Dehumidification set point. These options only show up if in the installer menu you had enabled humidity or dehumidification options. If you leave those off, then these items will not appear in this menu. Pressing next, filter service reminder. You can set this 365 days, 180, 120, 90 days, 60 days, 30 days, or off. When you set that to one of those numbers, the thermostat will give you a reminder on the display that it's time to change your furnace filter. Next one is a UV bulb. So if you have an ultraviolet bulb in your air handler, that needs to be changed on a periodic basis. Same thing. This will give you options of changing or a reminder to change the UV bulb. Humidifier pad. If you have humidifier and it has a water pad, same thing. You can get a reminder number of days to change your humidifier pad. Hold. This has to do with overriding your program. When you're using a programmable thermostat, maybe you have an opportunity where you want to override it for several days. You don't want to use the program. You just want to keep it at one temperature. The hold feature will allow you to do that. You can do a long hold or a 24-hour hold. Most people go with the long hold. That's an indefinite hold. Once you put it on hold, it stays at the temperature you set. 24-hour mode would expire and then resume your program schedule. Next again, adjustment limit. This has to do with your program schedule. If you're running in a program mode, you can limit the ability to change the temperature away from the program set point. By default, it's set to off, but if you adjust this to 1, 2, 3, in your program period, if your set point is 70 and you have adjusted this to 1, you would only be able to override your program by 1 degree or 3 degrees, depending on what you set this for. If you leave it set to off, then you can adjust as far as you want. That's a temporary override adjustment limit. Next again is your override time frame. So when you do an override will typically last for 4 hours or the next program interval change, whichever occurs first. So when you're running in your daily program schedule, and let's say it's during the daytime portion of the schedule, and you're at home, but the temperature's kind of cold, you want to bump it up, you certainly can. You can bump it up, but after 4 hours, it will resume the program schedule. Let's go back into that menu. Hold length, long or 24 hours. We went over that. Adjustment limit, 4-hour override. This is where you can lock the thermostat keypad completely based on the user level lock that was in the installer menu. I know this gets a little confusing, but in order to lock the keypad, you have to set a lock code here. So it would be Same thing. We're going to go with 1, 2, 3. And then this gives you an option to reset the thermostat. Yes or no. We don't want to reset it. We're going to press next. Those are the options in the user menu. And again, there is a chart that details all of these options in the user manual. Talks about what all those options do, what you can set, various parameters there. These are the two different menus on this thermostat. In the box, installer manual. This manual has that chart that I was talking about. Let's open it up. I'll show you real quick. Get into the manual. Right in the middle. You can see all the different options, starting option number 1 all the way down. Each one explained, tells you what it does. User manual, different manual. It also has a chart detailing the items that are in the user menu. I'm going to put links to these manuals in the video description. If you like what you get here, subscribe. Call me if you need support. I'll put the phone number in the description as well. Everything we talked about today applies to the 4235 model. A lot of it also applies to the model 4030. The humidity functions do not apply to 4030. It doesn't have that. 4235 has humidity control. 4030 does not. So some basic differences there. Also, the 4030 is only good for up to 2 heat, 1 cool in a heat pump rather than 3 heat, 2 cool. So some of those staging options will be a little different, but the menus work exactly the same. And you can see the differences in the charts in the various manuals. So like and subscribe, as they always say. Check the video description. You'll get some links to our website, to the manuals, and the phone number for live support where you can talk with me and I'll help you out.